Joe is many things. He's a stalker, he's a kidnapper, he's a murderer. Overall, he's just a massive creep. That being said, Joe is laughably worse in the books. Hard to believe, I know, but just wait. By the end of this video, you will agree with me. Because in the Netflix show, they wanted to add some complexity to his character. Give him more positive traits to balance out his red flags. Can you still call it a red flag when you're killing people, or does that become like a pirate flag? Anyway, Joe in the book is worse. There is not a single moment I did not hate this man and everything he stood for. Just throw him into the sun and hope it's hot enough to burn away the sins and the cringe. To be clear, this is not a criticism of the author. She wrote him to be hateable. And I tip my hat off to you, madam. You could not have done a better job. This is Joffrey Game of Thrones level hate. That being said, there is a mystery guest. Another character who is much worse in the books than in the show. I will cover that later, but now let's focus on our protagonist. He is very clearly meant to be a representation of a violent incel. While the book follows the same story as the show, there are minor changes that have quite a lot of impact to the characters. A significant change is that there is no sweet, innocent Parko for Joe to protect and befriend. That whole arc with his neighbors gave Joe a whole lot of brownie points that he was using to kind of coast through all the evil he did in the show. But no, none of that. In fact, he's shown to be annoyed and unamused by children. Don't get me wrong, he still wants them, but more as an extension of the fantasy of his relationship with Beck. Like, his end goal is to start a family with Beck, but he has little to no concern for the fact that the child is a human being that he needs to look after. Also, while the show does have Joe making violent outbreaks, day to day he's pretty calm. Book Joe is much more prone to day-to-day aggression. He's crass and has a bad tendency of throwing things when he's angry. There is literally a hole in his wall from when he threw a typewriter. Also, he kills Benji because he was angry that Beck didn't have sex with him. There was no, oh, Benji is a killer, or I need to do this to protect Beck, or you disrespected her. No. To be clear, Benji is still playing Beck. He's still giving her that fuckboy treatment. But the reason for his death is very different. Benji didn't kill anyone in the book. It was quite literally, I did not get my dick wet and I need to take that out on someone, and you're in a cage, so I can take it out on you. And then he convinced himself he did the right thing because Benji was reading and was finally living up to his potential. Those are Joe's words, not mine. So it's actually much better that he died now while he was on his way up, because most people die on their way down.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It's the same when he kills Peach and Candace. He shows no guilt. It's their fault. If Peach wanted to live, she would have fought him off harder. And obviously Candace wanted to die. Otherwise, why did she break up with him right next to her lake? She knew what he was. She knew what he would do. It was suicide by Joe. No, there is no remorse in this version of Joe. And his past is not as insane as in the show. To be clear, his parents weren't great. They were terrible parents still. He wasn't raised by Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv. But in the show, they are trying to show how he became what he was. The steps that he took. His father was abusive, his mother abandoned him. And in the book, while he mentions they're neglectful, not taking good care of him, the abuse is massively dialed down and he never actually ends up in foster care. Mooney's abuse is also mentioned, but it's to a lesser extent. It also kind of feels like Joe has more autonomy in their relationship because Joe isn't reliant on Mooney. Mooney didn't adopt him. Joe can go home, but he spends time with Mooney because they have this shared love of books and he sees Mooney as a parental figure. Now, one of Joe's main character traits in the show is that he has a disdain for the rich. In the show, he finds rich people either privileged, living off daddy's money, or evil, because there's no way they made that money the right way. And to be honest, based on the characters we've seen in the show, he ain't wrong. The man is right. They're all either privileged or evil. But for himself, he seems very indifferent to his own financial situation. He enjoys the privilege of being rich when he's married to Love and Kate, but it's more like he enjoys the power to solve his murder sprees and his problems. In reality, he doesn't really have any ambition to be more than what he is.
But I love books. And I want my life to be about what I actually love.
I mean, even when he has a rich wife to support him, he still ends up working at a library. In the book, it's different. He hates the rich because he's jealous. The only reason he hates them is because they have what he doesn't, and he feels like he deserves it more. He's also a terrible friend. In the show, Ethan is shown to already work there, whereas in the book, he actually hires Ethan, so he meets Ethan, and he despises the man.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
And the reason why he hates him so much is because Ethan's happy. Ethan is a happy-go-lucky guy. It's actually so funny in the job interview that Ethan mentions he left a prestigious accounting job in order to work there because he loves books and he could talk about it all day and he wants his life to be about what he loves, which is books. So he found a job at a bookstore. And Joe's reaction to that is, what a loser. All he wants to do is talk about books all day. Who wants to do that? Brother, that is your whole thing. You want to talk about books. But in the end, the only reason he hires him is because he considers Ethan to be unattractive and therefore not competition for Beck's attention. Another big change. Joe stalks Beck much longer in the book before the train scenes. In the TV show, they meet, he stalks her seemingly for a few days, and there's the train scene. In the book, we're talking weeks and months of hanging around her house without them actually directly interacting again. He even buys costumes. They flirt at the bookstore, he stalks her for a couple of months, he saves her life, she then ignores him for a few more weeks, and then they finally go out and start dating. In the book, this is the bit I couldn't believe, is that he is even more predatory than on the show. Shocking, I know, but at least the way he thinks and narrates is more predatory and the romance is dialed down. In the show, whatever the reality of the situation is, Joe's fantasies are of romance and love. When he's talking about Beck and his other love interests, he's talking about the romance of it. Cleaning for her, cooking for her, building a life together, making her his wife and he'll be her perfect husband. In the book, it's more like he's looking to train a sex pet. It's about control and domination. This is a quote from the book. Watching you is better than touching you. I own you now, Beck. You don't know it, but I do. And then there's also the massive violent undertones to some of the things he says. For example, I want to punish you for making me want you so badly. I want to hurt you just enough that you know I'm in control. The whole relationship is different in the books. Beck shows significantly less interest in the books. In the show, you can see she's kind of feeling him. In the book, yes, she still flirts with him at the bookstore, but it's more implied that she kind of flirts with everyone. And I think the key difference in the two scenes, which makes it very obvious how they feel about Joe, is the text messages they send to their friends after. In the TV show, Beck messages,
what if it's finally time for me to date someone good for me?
while book Beck messages, too bad he's not my type. I don't like nice guys. There is a clear lack of desire and interest, even if it seems to be fueled by her own problems about not liking nice guys, but that's beside the point. She doesn't want you. And this is a trend that continues throughout the book. Beck don't fuck with Joe. Even when her bed breaks, which also happens in the book, Joe sees her messages tons of people. She basically messages every person under the sun. Everyone says no, and then she finally messages Joe. And when she finally does get Joe's help, she refers to him as a worker slave to her friends. And he sees this. He's not naive to this. He's reading her messages. He sees the fact that he was 97th choice. He sees the worker slave comment, and he is still convinced that she likes him because he reached out to her. Bro, read it. Read it. She cancels the first date with Joe because Benji sends a "you up" text, and she goes to sleep with him instead. He is halfway there on the train and has to come back because she pretends that she has a school problem, but he knows it's not the truth because he can see the texts. This is Will and Jada Smith level of toxicity. Wake up and smell the roses. But to be honest, it really helps to sell Joe's delusion. He can read all of these messages that are screaming to him and yet still be utterly convinced she's perfect for him and that she's in love with him. And at this point, you might be asking, if Beck doesn't fuck with Joe and she don't like him, how do they end up together? Great question. It's because she likes an ego boost of a person being obsessed with her. Obviously, she doesn't know to what extent he's obsessed with her, but she likes the fact that he showers her with compliments. Unlike in the show, she is not some TA in a prestigious university. Joe mentions she's talented, but she's not applying herself, and that's why she didn't get into a better university. In the book, she doesn't get into Brown, she gets into some other university because she got rejected by Brown. But the thing is, only Joe ever talks about her being talented. All the other characters, her teachers, her friends, her family, they find her writing mediocre, boring, and confusing. They don't like reading it, and she never gets published. Even Beck, at the end of the book, admits she doesn't like writing. She has no ideas, no inspiration. She just writes about her life and changes the name. She literally wants to drop writing to move to LA and become an actress. She just doesn't manage to because Joe gets to her first. Now, if it wasn't clear already, the other person that I was talking about earlier in the video about the massive glow down is Beck, whose counterpart is terrible. A terrible, terrible person, almost matching Joe in terms of glow down, not in terms of craziness. Joe is obviously the king of crazy. Her character lacks all of her TV show's positive traits while taking her negative traits and dialing it to about 1,000. When I say she does some crazy shit herself, she's a sociopath in her own right. Not Joe's level, but crazier than the average bear. She thrives on attention. She gets validation from people wanting her even though she may not want them. When Peach dies, she tells Joe that the reason she kept Peach around is because she knew that Peach was in love with her and obsessed with her, and she's gonna miss that, which is the whole reason she's dating Joe. Also, the scene where her and Peach go to a holiday home also happens in the book. But the difference is, she's left there by herself while Joe kills Peach. She thinks Peach disappeared, and then she proceeds to steal from Peach. She takes the bathrobes with her and then proceeds to still wear them after finding out about Peach's death. Let me repeat that for the people at the back. She wears and gets the men she sleeps with to wear her dead friend's robes that she stole. And that's just the start of her craziness. Also, in the book, they give much more detail about how the affair with the therapist started. And it's made very clear that Beck was the instigator. She was consistently and aggressively pursuing him. And at the end, he decides to leave his wife for her. And it's at that point, she ends things. She herself says she never wanted the therapist. She just wanted to prove that she could have him if she wanted him. He sends her a message saying, "I've left my wife. We need to figure out what I'm going to do with these kids and we can be together." And she goes, "Nah, mate, you're good. Go back to your wife." It's a power trip for her. The witch, the wardrobe, and the fucking audacity of this bitch. This need for attention is also shown through her obsessive masturbation with open blinds so everyone can look in, and moaning so audibly that Joe can hear it from across the street. It's exhibitionism and performatism. She wants people to look. To be clear, that is Joe's perspective, so take it with a grain of salt. But also, what other perspective can you have when you're violently orgasming next to an open window? But she is also shown to be a borderline sex addict. Joe mentions that she masturbates several times a day and she can't leave the house without flicking the bean at least once before walking out the door. She's shallow, openly pursuing Benji and other men for their money and accepting lavish gifts. Also, I have to say this since we're talking about Benji and Beck. The red ladle story in the book is probably the weirdest and craziest thing Beck does. I remember watching the show and thinking that being spanked by a red ladle is pretty low on the king spectrum. Like, Benji, brother, you do drugs. You do enough drugs to be a guest star on Breaking Bad. You should get off your high horse because it's not that weird. Now, it's not like... I have to be very careful with my example here to not upset any of the kink communities, but it's not like she's asking you to dress up like a blueberry so she can lick whipped cream off you. Being spanked by a red ladle is not that deep. Now, in the book, this story is crazy. In the book, she knew of Benji, but she didn't know him. In order to get access to him, she pretends to be his maid, shows up at his house. He obviously knows she's not his maid because, well, he knows his maid. She then seduces him and still cleans his house. After which, she begs to go IKEA so they can specifically buy the red ladle. That is so much weirder. Having a red ladle around that you like being spanked with is one thing. Specifically asking a man that you conned into sex by showing up as his maid to go buy a red ladle is fucking weird. No wonder she was in therapy. This explains why Benji calls her crazy, because that is a crazy way to meet someone. But the thing is, her sex drive is just further proof of her complete lack of interest in Joe, because they do not have sex for weeks after they start talking. They have phone calls, and Joe is obviously trying to move things forward, but she shows no interest in him or doing anything with him aside from an audience to hear her talk. He literally complains that she never actually asked anything about himself. She just calls occasionally to rant about her life, then does a polite, "So how are things with you?" He goes fine, and then they end the call. Overall, Beck is a satirical view of a millennial woman. Entitled, promiscuous, Joe compares her to a restaurant that's easy to get into. No reservation or dress code needed, which I ain't gonna lie is kind of bars. Mean, but funny. Beck is basically if Andrew Tate gave notes on a character. But the thing is, while I hate her character, I don't hate the character. Caroline Kepnes wrote the character really well. She's just a young girl suffering from low self-esteem and using her obvious attractiveness to try and fill in that psychological void. Flawed, but in a way that makes her relatable. She's not proud of the things she does. In the book, she doesn't go to therapy to deal with Peach's death. She goes because she realizes she has a problem with her relationship with men and she goes to try and fix it. She's young and she understands she needs to change, and yes, she slips and she fails and she falls. That being said, I don't think you can fail harder than going to a therapist to try and improve your relationship with men and then proceeding to seduce and sleep with that therapist. I think gold medal for toxicity there. But She understands she needs to change, and Joe doesn't give her that chance because he cuts her life short before she can change. Honestly, when I read the book, certain traits reminded me of some girls that I knew at uni. And I saw them grow out of this. It was a phase. Similarly, the Joe, Beck, and Benji desire chain of wanting someone who wants someone is probably something that everyone can relate to. I'm sure at some point in your life, you were pining for someone who wasn't interested in you. You were hoping to change their mind, but at the same time, they were pining for someone who wasn't interested in them. In the book, Benji's also pining for someone else. It sucks. It's a sucky situation. In the end, Beck is grounded and messed up in a way that makes her interesting, while being the perfect balance to show how delusional this version of Joe is. But to be honest, I don't think I could watch a season of this version of the characters. So I think Netflix made the right call. I'd be the one throwing the typewriter at the TV, do you know what I'm saying? But I have to say, I enjoyed the book way more than I expected. I would absolutely recommend it. I did it as an audiobook. This video is sponsored by... No, I'm kidding. No Audible clout. But interestingly, Greg from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend narrates it. And he absolutely nails it. He might want to look inwards and see why he seems to play these bitter characters who are pining for someone who wants someone else.
Won't you settle for me? Come on and settle for me.
It's becoming a trend. But otherwise, he does a great job. But honestly, I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. Have you read the book? Maybe you saw the characters in the relationship differently and have a different perspective. I'd love to hear it. But otherwise, until then, like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my other videos. And for now, have a good one.